Good evening. This is Tonight with Tim Modise. On the show tonight, we discuss the tensions arising from the land without compensation call of the economic freedom fighters and the scourge of women abuse and murders in South Africa. Welcome. Land expropriation without compensation is an issue that is going to dominate the elections that are going to be held within a year. The issue of land is already polarizing South Africans along racial lines. It is a long, complex matter with a long history, and it has defined the South African economy, but it is also causing tensions within communities in places such as Soweto, Olivenhoofsbosch, and parts of Cape Town, as well as other parts of Gauteng. The economic freedom fighters has been blamed for the land invasions in Proteas land, and to tell us more about this is Mandisa Mashego, the EFF's Gauteng chairperson. Pleasure to have you with us here, man. And of course, that's the bigger call of the EFF, that there has to be land expropriation without compensation, even though there are a whole number of issues to be considered before that can be implemented. But I start first with the developments in Soweto, where people have invaded land, and this has created tensions with bondholders, homeowners in that part of Soweto. How do you explain the land invasions that are taking place there?
Without knowing the particular details of the Protea matter, because around Gauteng we've occupied a lot of land. You may not know about it, but naturally it would be in the periphery of the province, because our land occupation is premised on vacant, unused land. So for instance, we would not occupy where there's a construction underway, something functional. But where there's dilapidated buildings, for instance, we could occupy that have been dilapidated for a long time. Let's come to the issue of the basis on which we occupy, right? Primarily, it's for residential use. Primarily. We're not saying it should only be limited to that. We hope that people like yourself who might have some money to invest in an industrial project and are finding it difficult to be given, access to property and land, would also be keen to occupy. We've had churches. You would know that churches get very frustrated, in Gauteng particularly, when they need land to put up a building, etc., for the purposes of their church. So in instances in Mamelodi, around Nelmepias, we've occupied land and shared that land with the church, with a creche, with a few other small entities that are needed in a new community. So to go back to the Protea issue. When the communities occupy, most of them come from those who have been frustrated by the housing list process that started in '96. They were on the list, they qualified for a low-income benefit from the state, they didn't get it. The second group of people are the people who have been living in backyards. And believe it or not, from the townships, there are generations being raised in backyards. So we have that group. And then the last group are those members of our communities who have been stuck in informal settlements, also on housing lists, or just gotten onto the housing list, waiting to be allocated.
But here's the point, and we'll come back to this matter. Firstly, you're talking about the churches, right?
Yeah.
In the city of Joburg, and I'm sure you know this, churches have also been breaking the laws, the bylaws of the city. I'm told that there are 200 instances where churches illegally occupied buildings, and that the city is now expropriating those buildings back. You're familiar with that matter? I'm
familiar with some of those cases, not all of them. You see, when you have a dysfunctional situation, so unfortunately the municipalities, majority of them now are highly dysfunctional. I mean, West Rand municipality now is under threat of not being able to pay salaries. Mfuleni is in a permanent crisis with Lesedi, Midval, bigger crisis under DA. All of them, Merafong, I'm talking the locals. The metros have got crises which we know about on a day-to-day basis. Joburg can hardly now approve a budget because the white obsessed DA with neoliberal policies wants to continuously pass, rate hikes onto citizens, and we simply can't afford it.
No.
So the issue is that when you have a dysfunctional government that fails to do a simple thing, I want to go back to the housing list.
Yes.
That housing list was not a process of anyone else. It's a process of the government, right?
Yes.
The government itself established a process for poor working class persons to get a house so that they can, have that cost alleviated from the budget.
I'm with you.
It became dysfunctional. Obviously, what's going to happen? Chaos is going to reign supreme.
The question I want to ask is that are the people who the EFF is giving land to or inviting to take over unoccupied land, people who are on housing lists? This is what you know for sure.
Majority of them are. Like I said, some of them would have been what we call backyard dwellers. I find it quite a derogatory term. But some of them are what we all commonly know as backyard dwellers. People who are in a back room, and they've been there for generations, yes. Believe it or not. Most of them would have been on housing lists, of course, because they would have then applied for what is called an RDP house, or for the other alternative, the people who earn between a certain amount and 7,500, who can afford to pay rent but can't afford to get a bond. So they would have been on those databases.
But to your mind, what is it that makes it difficult for people who are on lists to be allocated housing? Because we've seen these houses being built over a period of time. It may not be at the rate that everybody would like to see. But why is it difficult, you think, for the government to know who's on the housing list and who's not? Because we've heard reports of people jumping the queue.
Yes, it's corruption.
How does it happen?
It's corruption.
Because you see, I'm asking this question, I thought about it and said, if you want to know whether you are registered as a voter or not, all you do is send an SMS.
Yeah, with your ID number.
Within an instant.
Seconds,
and you will be told exactly where you are registered and so on.
Where you're
Why
voting.
is it simple to do that but difficult to know if somebody has been allocated a house or not?
Those are the things that we need to correct. We don't think, Tim, we are dealing with constituencies daily on the hour. It's corruption. It's maladministration, and it's dysfunctional government systems. Let me give you a practical example. You go to the provincial office in town of human settlements that used to be called housing in '96 to go and register because you fall within that group that earns either below 3,500 or below 7,500. I think they've increased it to 10 now. You can't afford a bond, you can't afford rent. You apply. They give you a reference in some form, a document to confirm that you are now on the housing list, Then there's another process that they are now supposed to give you, I think it's called a C form, where you are now confirmed that you have been allocated a house when next a house will be available. They do not confirm, of course, for obvious reasons, where your house will be, because it will depend on the developments around the province. And then I think at some point they give you options. Are you willing to stay this side, south of Joburg, north, west, whatever, or even in another municipality? I'm not sure whether they go across municipalities. They go to that extent, right? So they give you this confirmation, like you're saying, the example of the IEC. Houses get built. No more communication with you. You are not even told what number you are on that list. So I'm saying, one, it's corruption. It's a dysfunctional government system, right from national, provincial to local. That is why when after we, when this DA guy, Herman Mashego, took over in Joburg, one of the first things we pushed him to attend to was the housing list, because that housing list needs to be cleaned up. Let me move on to the issue of why you end up not getting allocated. We have hundreds and thousands of our people. Some have died between '96 and now because they were already elderly by then. When they go back to the Department of Housing, now the big crisis that we are having now, is that their houses have been allocated. The ID number, uyafika, ubanikeza ID number yako or receive form yako. You've been allocated a house. They even give you the address.
But
your address in Orange
never
Farm.
taken delivery
You
of the same
go
house.
there, either there's no house, or there's still a foundation, as has happened in Winterfeld with 3,000 houses, and in Olivenhout-Bosch, and in Sebokeng, Everton. Or you get there, the house is there, you even go to the house. Tim Modise stays in my house.
So it's been allocated to somebody else. Now,
I have a title deed. Let me tell you where the corruption comes in and the injustice to me as the beneficiary. I've been given a title deed. According to the state, I have a house. I can't even go back and reapply and say, no, but I did not get my house. I immediately get chucked out by the bureaucrats of the department. They say, no, you've been allocated a house.
But that's the problem of corruption, which politicians like yourself and, of course, activists...
No, not like myself. Not like myself. Not like the EFF. There's not a single EFF politician has been caught in corruption.
I'm not saying you are the corrupt ones.
Yeah, but don't say politicians like ourselves.
Are the ones who must
governing party.
Okay, I'm saying you must help
the
solve
ANC,
the problem, like you are raising
They
it
must
now.
own the problem.
Absolutely.
We will solve it.
Absolutely.
We are already solving it with occupation, number one.
I'm saying exactly that.
And then the police.
Politicians like yourself must raise it. But
no, the police must step in, Tim. Let me add a very critical, and I'm sorry.
Can I interrupt you on this
that's
one?
Fine.
I want to talk about this from the point of view of those who already have houses, right? From the
who legitimately have them.
Exactly, like the residents in Proteaed land.
Yes.
When they see the invasions and the occupation happen around their homes, I think correctly so, get concerned that their property prices will come down, and number two, the services that they receive, remember these are bondholders,
Yeah.
that the services that they receive and they pay for, electricity and water, are going to be taken, which seems to be a first-hand experience on their part, going by the interviews I've seen and the stuff that I've read on the matter, that these services then get taken over by people who would have occupied the land next to their homes.
That is why it's extremely critical that the land expropriation without compensation process bill and the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution, along with other sections of the Constitution like Section 9 as well as Section 36, that process needs to be expedited, because you can ask the question you're asking, but unfortunately we are not going to be able to give you the answers, because the reality is that people need houses. There's vacant land out there. 72% of the land which is available in this country is owned by white people.
Yeah, and they don't live in proteted land.
And even individuals.
Yeah.
No. Don't be opportunistic. The land that we are occupying, which is vacant, in majority of cases, it's owned by some white person. Yes, there are instances where...
Let me ask you this question. Are you sympathetic to those homeowners in an area?
Extremely sympathetic to them.
Tell me how. How should their problem be resolved?
Remember that we are sitting... The reason we are sitting with this crisis is because of the mismanagement even of the economy. Because had our people had decent jobs, proper salaries, proper medical aids, because you can't rely on a government clinic and a government hospital.
Why not?
You walk in there healthy, you come out with a very serious disease or dead even. So our people need to get jobs, they need to be paid properly. This 20 rand an hour minimum wage thing, another massive crisis that is adding to our problem. Uncontrollable inflation, uncontrollable. All of these are indications of a government that has lost control of everything.
Now, let me
so we sympathize with those residents, but our people also need to sympathize with the poor. Our people need to now understand it's extremely urgent that we deal with the land question in a constitutional way, which is what we have proposed, that amend Section 25 of the Constitution, amend other sections that are reactionary, like Section 9 that talks about equality. There's no equality. There's only equality in terms of your humanity, in the eyes of God, if you could say that. But there's no equality. There's gross inequality, and that inequality is not only inequality, it's inequality on racial terms, on gender terms. Black women are at the rock bottom of the barrel of income, of even the violence that we are subjected to. I was coming to the issue of the police when you were talking about the housing issue. That comes in. You have laws. The police are there to uphold laws. They don't do it. People are selling houses, RDP houses. That is another issue. RDP houses are being sold historically for the last 25 years, or rather 20 years, by ANC ward councillors who are in collusion with police officers.
Here's the point, Mandisa, which I want us to deal with.
Yeah.
I'm going to invite you back again, not only for you to make the allegations that you're making, but to get the ANC itself.
I've got evidence.
Absolutely. Then we can
evidence.
Then you can present it to them.
Up to today, the ANC has not taken action against their ward councillors. Some have been arrested.
Trust
in
me.
Snake Park, one was arrested.
Trust me.
With police.
We're going to have that discussion debate on the program.
We must have it.
So that we can clarify all of the issues that you've raised.
Please.
And on the other hand, the proteted land residents.
And then can I bring some of the constituencies so that you don't accuse me of lying?
No. We'll organize it the best way we can.
2 or 3 of them.
But thanks for being our guest on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's the EFF chairperson, as you've heard. The organization sympathizes with the residents, but on the other hand, you've got to be sympathetic to those who are without homes. But is that the way to go? We're going to have this debate that I've spoken about in the future. Watch the space in the next few weeks' time. But when we come back shortly, we'll be talking about the permanent threat that women live under in our society.